Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 2 of our Brand Purpose series, sponsored by Zephyr.
Today we welcome Mark Prue, Global Director of Media Quality and Responsibility at Kenvue. Mark handles household brands like Aveeno, Band-Aid, Neutrogena, and Tylenol. Mark, great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Mark, how do you handle user-generated content in walled gardens to make sure brands' purpose stays, front and center without getting overshadowed by any harmful or inappropriate content?
Yeah, I think I'm fortunate to have a role in my company where we really get to focus on brand safety, on best practices, how to maximize the value when it comes to verification, how we measure the actions we take when it comes to brand safety and protecting the reputation of our brands. And I think when it comes to walled gardens, social platforms, you don't have the same capabilities when it comes to open web, but I think we make the most of what is available to us. And that includes something simple like limited standard and expanded mode on a lot of feed environments, and really ensuring that we have consistency across our markets, across our brands, when it comes to our risk threshold, our tolerance for certain types of user-generated content. And while those solutions, I think, are imperfect, we make the most of what we can, and while continuing to push the platforms, I think, to a similar level of capability that we have with ad verification and brand safety in open web.
Mark, how do you protect your brand's reputation in walled gardens where you have to deal with risks like misinformation, criticism, and controversial news cycles?
I think, aside from taking advantage of the controls that are available to us as Kenvue, I think we've been really fortunate in that we've been able to, as a company that, now is a little less than 2 years old, we've really been able to redefine our approach to content and appearing in the environments and against the content that really resonates with our consumers. And I think as a result of that, we're a little less conservative than we were as J&J Consumer. With J&J, you're protecting a 135-year-old brand, probably more than that now since I last quoted that age. But I think, there's more, going to be more risk averse as J&J. And as Kenvue, you have the opportunity to redefine yourself in terms of what content and what content you want to appear next to. So with that, we really revised our content guidelines. I think we really took the approach of thinking about how do our consumers interpret the content we appear adjacent to. And in social media environments, there's a wide variety. And I think we try not to overreact to appearing next to certain types of content, recognize when people are having fun, recognize when people might have different cultural nuances, certain jokes that don't necessarily resonate with your own lived experience. And I think that's something that we talk a lot about in DEI conversations with advertisers about how they're not so risk averse when it comes to brand safety that they wind up excluding certain audiences or excluding certain types of content that they want to stay away from. And I think that has really helped us in terms of our brand safety approach in social media platforms to not overreact in terms of pausing or trying to exclude certain types of content because of this very risk-averse approach. I think in terms of the brand purpose, the authenticity of our messaging, that's really left to our brand development teams, who are awesome in terms of the messaging that they want to create and creative that they feel resonate with their audience. But I view my role as very much supporting our brand teams in that mission. And what I can do is make sure that we're protecting the reputation without being overly risk averse.
I appreciate that insight, Mark. And it's really intriguing to hear about how you look at it on behalf of your company and on behalf of the brands that you're representing. But how do you stay authentic, especially on social platforms where fake news could be prevalent? Like, what do you do to make sure that if there's fake news that's going to be aligned near or close to your ad, what do you do? What's your strategy? Walk us through that.
Yeah. I guess probably the best example that I can come up with, because it's really near and dear to our hearts at Kenvue, is unfortunately there is misuse and abuse of our products at times. And that's not necessarily the fault of the platforms to start with, in terms of that it happens. They can't control the actions of their users and necessarily what they're going to post. And I think at times, maybe they do not even understand that these products are being misused. But we do. We understand our products very well, and we understand what is unintended and off-label use of our products. And in certain instances, especially with younger users, they can harm themselves, even die in certain instances. And with social media, it has the ability to encourage certain behaviors, even harmful ones. And we feel very much it is our responsibility to reach out to social media platforms and identify these instances where there's misuse of our products and challenge them to see how they can better identify and moderate that content. And how, more importantly, how can we help them better identify and moderate that content, since we are the experts when it comes to our products. So that's, an issue that's very near and dear to Kenview. I think with misinformation, you're talking about an issue that all advertisers care about. And recognizing that the name of the game is risk mitigation, not elimination. So acknowledging that there is always going to be some misinformation when it comes to social media platforms. Parsing out, is it harmful? Does it have the potential to really go viral and become a trend where you need to take actions such as just pausing your brands altogether? I think that's really should be viewed as the last resort. And it is in our toolkit, depending on what we're seeing in terms of social listening, how other brands are responding to misinformation and evolving news cycles. But it's challenging. And I think it comes back to you make the best of the tools that are available to you when it comes to the proprietary platform controls. But we still don't have that unique ability to stay away from certain types of content that might be unsuitable for your specific brand or an issue that you particularly care about as a company or as a brand. And I think we need to continue to push social media platforms to get there, because reporting either directly from the platforms in terms of their transparency reports, or even from some of the verification companies, you're understanding after the fact when your brands might have appeared next to misinformation or certain types of messaging that are unsuitable for your brands. But the damage has kind of been done at that point. And even with that data, how can you optimize away from that content that you don't want to be next to? I feel like the ability isn't quite there yet with social media platforms. So it's an issue to push the partners on.
Appreciate your perspective on the proactiveness. With that said, because you're so deep within the space, because of your experience on the tech platform side and your experience doing what you're doing at Kenview, help us understand what trends you foresee are taking place within the near future and the long-term future. How can we as an industry improve to make sure that brand purpose stays genuinely true?
I think for the brand teams, I think going in with a more open mindset when it comes to criticism of your brands, certain types of content that occur within social media platforms, a criticism of your brand isn't necessarily a basis to have the social media platform take it down. And we had those conversations internally of, is this misinformation about our brands that poses a harm, or is this someone who just has a criticism? The latter is not necessarily cause for the social media platforms to take action. That's par for the course. I think with a lot of brands, everyone's entitled to an opinion about your brand. So I think that's a development in the mindset, and also acknowledging that it's not risk elimination. I don't believe there will be such a thing as 100% brand safe or 100% brand suitable. It's about mitigating your adjacency to that content and mitigating your risk exposure to truly unsafe floor content. In terms of the capabilities and how do you action on that, I see us inching towards the capabilities that we have for open web, either proprietary or through third-party verification. And I think that's good progress, because I think even when I started at J&J Consumer, you'd have the conversation with social media platforms about why can't we apply third-party verification? Why can't we make optimizations? And the conversation was sort of a non-starter. You weren't getting anywhere. Now, at least you have the ability to apply certain types of third-party ad verification to at least understand what is my risk exposure to high, medium, low risk content, to floor content. And that reporting shows that generally, I'll use Meta as an example. It generally shows that it's a pretty safe place. And I believe that. But we're really interested in that uniquely unsuitable content for Kenvue brands? And how could we take action on that? How could we use the reporting to say, okay, let's make some tweaks to ensure that we are appearing next to the content that our audience really expects us to be adjacent to, that resonates with them, that's going to create a positive association with our brands. And I think, like I said, we have loosened up a little bit as Kenvue in that we're not so risk averse. We are more open to being adjacent to content that our consumers read, that they consume, that they watch. And that helps us, I think, in terms of being more open with the social media platforms. I think in terms of the capabilities that they offer, it's a bit of an uphill battle. And I believe and recognize that they want to ensure that we're not hindering ourselves, that we're not limiting our ability to reach consumers. So it's a conversation, and, we as the brand have perspective, but I feel like we're making progress. And I think in terms of getting better, I think the more hands-on you can be with brand safety and ad verification, the better we as an industry are for it. Kenvue obviously is taking a strong stance with a dedicated team. But I'm excited when other brands have similar teams, because I think it's a great opportunity to be collaborative as an industry.
Collaboration is key. With that said, Mark, we just want to thank you for being here today on behalf of ATG and myself. Thank you to our audience, and big thank you to Zephyr for sponsoring this series, Brand Purpose. We appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks.